Hello, everyone. Welcome. Teresa Brooks here and bringing you the Coach Podcast Show, another great episode on the line for you. Today I have a wonderful guest with me and someone who I'm very fond of, and we've had a lot of chats behind the scenes, and we're going to bring some of those to light to you today. So I'd like to welcome Jaimie Sarah. She is an executive coach and marketing consultant who helps 6, 7 and 8-figure experts to attract and retain more high caliber clients. She was voted Executive Coach of the Year in 2019 and 2020 and has been featured in Forbes, Thrive Global and more, including Coach as well, had you there, and now on the podcast. So it's wonderful to have you. Thanks so much and welcome, Jaimie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this juicy conversation with you, and I think some of the things we're going to talk about are going to really resonate with your listeners.
Yeah, and this is the thing, isn't it? The key word is to resonate. We don't just want to talk at people, and you know the listeners here are so valuable to me, and they tune into Coach and they tune into me and they say how the podcast helps them in just little daily ways with the variety of guests. And so we do want to resonate with them. And the topic that we've got today, I think absolutely will. And the topic really is behind the scenes, what happens really in the life of a coach. And we all know that life is not all rainbows and unicorns. In fact, I don't know anyone's life who is, to be honest, and that's not where we get any learnings or richness from. But I think, in our industry as well, Jaimie, and I know that you agree with this, there's a lot of spin, there's a lot of gloss, there's a lot of glam, there's a lot of branding. And quite frankly, that way of projecting ourselves is coming to the close. I think it's coming to the end, really. And so with like vulnerability as a new currency and trust and honesty and transparency being values that we hold dearly, it's changing a little. And I know that we sometimes feel we've got to be perfect, but your life, of course, has not been perfect, as has mine. And we're going to just talk about that a little bit today to kind of get a bit more real with it. So with no further ado, let's dig in. And just off air there, we were just talking about how you've had a bit of a difficult trot lately with some illness and things going on that have kind of can derail your life behind the scenes a little bit. Do you want to just share a little bit of like where you are and sort of how you show up to us today?
Yeah, so I think like many of us, the last 2.5 years have been, well, the last 2 years, it feels like longer. The last 2 years have been, I think, tricky for most of us in different ways. And over the last 2 years, I had a relationship that broke down almost exactly 2 years ago, with a young son at the time who was just 1. And then more recently, in the last few months, I caught COVID a second time, have been ill for the last 4 months, and then also had, a few different things fall apart. Had a new business partnership that fell apart, had some other kind of things happen, some things I needed to take legal action on that I'd never had to deal with before in my 6 years as an entrepreneur. And things have just been a bit turbulent. And I just think that as coaches, we actually have a duty to alchemize any challenging experiences that we have, to share the meaning that they bring to us, to share authentically. I think one of my mentors says to me, he says, you shouldn't share when it's a wound, you share when it's a scab. So you share when the scab is healed. And I think sometimes there's such a thing as if you share when it's a wound and it's gashing blood everywhere, you just worry your audience.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible to share when it's become a scab and have that be part of your message, and have that be part of your inspiration, and have that be part of being this authentic leader in your space, versus being someone who thinks that in order to succeed and in order to excel, you have to only present the shiny and sparkly stuff, only present the rainbows, only present when your cat isn't jumping on your desk.
For those
And
of you who are listening, we have a lovely pussycat. There you are. Yes, I see you, and joining us there. And you know, cats don't care, so that's a great motto. Cats don't care. So yeah, but you're so right, Jaimie. Thank you for sharing that and being so open, because listen, there's not going to be one person that's listening to this podcast that's never had a difficult time, right? That's never gone through the breakup of a relationship and the agony behind the scenes as you try and process all of that. And then even if you're going to work, you know, showing up in your job, you know, was difficult to do. You know, I remember the days back in corporate where things would be going on in life. It was tough to get through the day. And if we had something difficult going on, then generally our colleagues would be supportive, right? So bring that into this world of entrepreneurial, you know, activity and online coaching. And we've got full control over who sees what and how and where. So it can be argued that it's, you know, it's all very curated, whether it's easy or not. So it's learning to find that balance, like you say, sharing the wound, not like, oh my God, this is my wound, look at the blood everywhere, but rather, this was my wound and this is how I cleared it up. So if you have a wound, you can do the same. And you're right, so sharing the learnings, it's the intention. So things have been quite difficult for you. Illness, of course, adds on to that. And you were sharing with me about how you felt when you were ill. You know, we all know that, down on the couch, cup of tea, oh God, never feel well again. Kind of, you know, what am I doing? And what crept in for you there that was difficult, Jaimie?
Well, I noticed, so for quite some time, one of the things that people have been drawn to me for, one of the things that clients have been drawn to me for, that I noticed was a pattern, was a number of people coming to me who had imposter syndrome secretly underneath the surface. And it was kind of one of the things that I became, it was never part of my message, but it was one of those things where when people worked with me, it was a common side effect of the work that we do, was that their imposter syndrome would be ditched. And what was funny is that sort of midway through, you know, becoming unwell, my imposter syndrome really reared its ugly head, really did. It was like, you know, who are you to be doing this? Who are you to be, you know, being this stand in the world? Who are you to be sharing your message when you feel like shit? You know?
Yeah. And of course, it's not your fault that you feel down. So what was it specifically that felt out of alignment for you?
I think it was that a part of my message over the last 6 years as a coach has been that you don't have to kill yourself succeeding, and you don't have to sacrifice your health, and you don't have to sacrifice your happiness. And so then when I found myself falling ill with COVID a second time and my health being in disarray, it was like, well, how can I still be this stand that you can succeed without compromising your health when my health is not great right now? And obviously, you know, it was triggered by a second bout of COVID. So it's not like it was necessarily triggered from neglect, but I was sat there asking myself the question, well, have I really been prioritizing my health? Have I really been prioritizing my health, my self-care in the way that I talk to clients about and in the way that I'm a stand for? And I think I had to be really honest with myself and say, do you know what? I haven't. I've been out of integrity with my self-care for the last few months, and acknowledging that that was probably a factor behind why I got so sick with COVID this second time and why it took me 4 months to recover. Was that my self-care was not where it normally was.
Yeah.
And I had to be really honest with that to myself. And I had to be really honest with my audience about that as well, whether it's my paid clients, people in my membership, or just people who follow me online. I had to be really honest. You know what? I've realized that my self-care had slipped and I'd been working too hard. And, you know, it starts out as kind of one innocent, oh, I'm just going to go on my laptop after my child's gone to bed because I've just got this one thing to do. You know, it starts off as this one isolated incident. And then before we know it, we're working every evening till 10, 11 o'clock. We're logging on at the weekends. We're working on Sundays. And then, you know, before we know it, then suddenly, you know, something that previously we might have brushed off, an illness that previously we might have brushed off. Suddenly, we're sick for a longer period and we're going, well, how did that happen?
Well, this is
well-being was
it.
one of my core values. What the hell?
Yeah, and of course it still is. And notice in there, I mean, I just want to just reflect to you, the value of kindness as well, and like self-compassion, because we can lose that in this like internal beating that we're giving ourselves, and when it's the one voice in your head, it's very easy to listen to it. And so again, it just, for me, that just comes up there of like just that kindness and self-compassion that we forget, and yet we are continually serving other clients with. And that, again, it leads us really, I think, nicely into a conversation around boundaries as well, because imagine something's going on behind the scenes. Like you say, you had a difficult relationship breakup, you've got a young son, single mom. I'm a single mom as well. I know what that is like, and it is really tough. And then you are serving other women, you're showing up in your strongest form, your most resilient form as well, and sharing, like you say, in context when it is useful and when it's going to help another client to go, God, do you know what, that is me, because we're just all mirrors, aren't we? So it's really being selective about that. So let's talk a little bit about boundaries of sharing online, boundaries of how you view the online space, and potentially the lack of boundaries, and maybe the disparity between what people are writing and what's showing up there and what's really going on, because that is something that we've dug into before. So firstly, like, how do you manage your own boundaries, Jaimie, and to decide, well, how much should I share or not share?
And I love what you said there around pointing out the self-kindness thing, because that was a big lesson for me while I was sick, was actually having, because boundaries aren't just about how we relate to others, boundaries around how we relate to ourselves. And Terry Cole has this great book called Boundary Boss, and she talks about external boundaries, which are how we interact with others, and internal boundaries, which is how we interact with ourselves. And there was a big lesson for me there around having the internal boundary of, I do not speak to myself like poop, right? If I wouldn't say this to another person, if I wouldn't cast this judgment to another person, I'm not going to do it to myself. And so when I first fell sick, and I had a couple of people getting annoyed with me that I was sick, and I was like, oh, this is juicy. Where's this mirroring? Where's this mirroring me being annoyed that I'm sick, me being annoyed with myself that I'm sick, right? And how can I take responsibility for that and own that and go deeper? Because often how others are interacting with us and boundaries that they're crossing is often a mirror to where we're crossing our own boundaries. And so there was
that's so interesting. Let's just unpack that a little bit for anyone that's thinking, what? So I guess really you're talking energetically, if someone gets annoyed with you, and what you're saying is the simple question to ask is like, where am I annoyed with me? So it's like, oh, and then you get that other perspective. And the thing is, Jaimie, if we wouldn't let somebody else talk to us that way, or use that language, whatever that might be, then we need to have a word with ourselves. And that's the real work, I think. So I remember one time I heard myself calling myself stupid woman, like I did something, whatever. And I noticed that I said that quite a lot. Stupid woman, we chat to ourselves. And suddenly I stopped and I thought, what would I think if someone else just turned around and said, you stupid woman? Like, would I accept that? Would I say something? Would I agree, disagree? And I thought, it was the first time I kind of caught that space between being so used to myself and within my own map of the world of perceptions and beliefs, and actually heard it and checked it. And I think that's just important for anyone listening to think, have you ever done that? What do you say in your head to yourself? That's the little net you want to have and catch it. So I love that. I think that is just so important, isn't it?
It is. It's so important. And I think that as coaches, especially as people who are standing for transformation and engaging in and facilitating transformation for others, I think asking that question to ourselves of, would I say this to a client? Or if a client came to me and they said this, what advice would I give them? What coaching would I give them? I think those are such useful tools to have in our toolkit for how we relate to ourselves, because there's a difference between being perfect and being someone who sometimes strays but knows how to bring themselves back. And I think it's more important that we are people who sometimes stray but know how to bring ourselves back. And part of our responsibility to ourselves as well as to our clients is to have that awareness, to notice where we're straying and come back as soon as possible, come back to ourselves, come back to our true selves, come back to consciousness, come back to awareness. And
come back to being human, really. It's like trying to be so perfect, but listen, we're going to slip up, we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to have, you know, broken friendships, relationships, business arrangements, that these things are life. We manage them the best we can. The thing is, as coaches, we have got tools, and I think sometimes we forget, oh, I can use this for myself, right? You know, I'm so busy using the tools for everyone else. When you kind of did that little bit of work, which can, to be honest, be momentary sometimes, did you notice a change in response from your clients, or how did you manage those situations like that? So I think that would be useful to understand.
So I think there's two types of people when you align or realign your boundaries. There's the people who go, I don't like that, I'm off, like, screw you. You haven't had boundaries with me before, you're not about to have them now, like, peace out. Right? And then there's the people who go, oh, this is slightly jarring, and I like this, and my respect for you just went up, and this actually feels even safer now, right? This relationship, this dynamic feels even safer now because I know where I stand with you, versus there being kind of this limitless well of patience, and you're never quite sure when the patience is going to run out, right? Which, you know, a client can be left feeling that way if they feel like they're not clear what your boundaries are. They can be, you know, feeling uncertain and wondering, okay, well, where is the line? Is there even a line? Then that can create a feeling of unsafety for them. And I think those are the two kind of main types of reactions when you align or realign your boundaries. And I think it's really, really important to remain detached from the outcome around which way it goes with any specific individual, because the people who are meant to stay will stay, and the people who are meant to go will go.
I mean, you know, just thinking there, Jaimie, it doesn't sound like the biggest shift of boundaries I've ever heard. Like, I'm really unwell at the moment. I'm not able to, you know, hold the space for the coaching, and we will need to, you know, rearrange this or whatever it might be. To me, that sounds really reasonable. I wonder why the responses were difficult. You know, what you thought about that and what that's taught you for moving forward, because none of us want to have difficult conversation, but most people are pretty empathetic. So I'm just curious about that, really.
I think that very often how people react is more about them than about you. I think
Always.
Yes, there is an interaction where people can be mirroring stuff within you. And also, in addition to that, right, it's not either or. Sometimes people are mirroring stuff to you, and also there is stuff going on for them. And yeah, I think it's just interesting to observe patterns and observe where instituting a boundary doesn't go down well, and to make that decision, you know, how am I going to handle this now? And I think when people have sometimes been used to you being a superhero and used to you being an over functioner and an overachiever and an over deliverer, and then suddenly they're faced with, do you know what, not only can you not overachieve in this moment, you actually can't even function in this moment. They either respond with empathy, or they respond with, you know, shock, horror.
That's so interesting.
alienation.
That's so interesting. And of course, it's always about, you know, people's responses, isn't it? That's what we're talking about in communication. And it's totally their choice. But I think that kind of circles back into, how do we show up as coaches? How do we hold our own boundaries? And how do we make those boundaries clear? I guess what's difficult is when you have a relationship with a client and you're moving forward, and then, you know, things change and maybe those boundaries need adjusting. So it's that really careful communication around, well, this is how we're going to do it now. And sometimes our changes and our growth, we're not always aware how that impacts on others and shows up. So it's constant awareness, isn't it? And like you said, you did mention something else as well. You mentioned the self-imposter creeping in. How did you manage that and, you know, get that back into its corner?
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned there as well around, you know, how you deal with is interesting, because, you know, you can think that because a dynamic has been a certain way, so for example, because a dynamic with a client, with a service provider, with a collaborator, whoever it is, because it's been a certain way, that's just the way it's always going to be. And I think it's so important, especially as agents for transformation and agents for, you know, demonstrating what's possible and demonstrating the change that's possible in the world. I think we really do have to be the change in terms of recognizing that whatever a dynamic's been in the past in any area, it's never too late to shift it.
Right? Totally agree. Yeah.
And so if you observe or you notice or it comes to your awareness that there's any dysfunctional dynamics that have been apparent in your relationships, there's always that opportunity to choose to break the cycle, right? Which I think you just spoke to. And so, for example, something that very often comes up with coaches is becoming aware of codependent patterns, right? Where you've been engaging in rescuing, where you've been engaging in saving, where you've been engaging in overgiving, for example. And then you have that opportunity to break the cycle and go, do you know what? I've actually just become aware of this pattern in myself. Can we have a chat about, you know, what this relationship looks like going forward? And then renegotiating boundaries. I think that's something that's really juicy and really interesting. And I think it's something that's especially necessary if you as a practitioner, either if you get sick or you have a bereavement or you've just had a child or you have another kind of either major loss or major life change, and you might need to pull back your energy a bit. And those are often the situations where we become aware of codependent patterns and we have that opportunity to break the cycle and choose something different.
I mean, it's a balance, isn't it, as always, between the responsibility and the commitment that we have to others, you know, the deal that we are in, if you like, of delivery, and then the allowance of life, you know, the allowance of breathing space into certain situations. And I'm pretty sure that most coaches would want to deliver exactly how they intend to. And I'm pretty sure that there's, you know, we've all been had a tendency to over deliver and just want so much from that passion for them to do so well, etc., etc. So even that comes from a good intention, but again, it's the awareness, isn't it?
Which is and that's all well and good when you've got your full energy and you've got your full health, right?
This is right. The cup is full.
Over delivering might be like, yeah, this is amazing and this feels really good and giving feels really good, right? But then suddenly when you haven't got your normal energy, realizing, oh wow, I can't do this now, right? It can be quite jarring for you as a practitioner, and also quite jarring for clients who are maybe used to that over functioning and that over delivering, right? But tying it into the imposter question that you asked, for me, I had to really have a conversation with myself about where any residual perfectionism was showing up, where I thought either on a conscious or a subconscious level that I had to be perfect to be worthy of being respected, or I had to be perfect to be worthy of being a transformational agent, being a leader in the space, being a leader of others, being a catalyst for others, and look at where on some level did I still think that I needed to be perfect to be worthy of that, and then dissect some residual stuff that I hadn't really realized was there until that moment. I thought that I dealt with my perfectionism stuff, right? When I had a child, and suddenly everything's so different. And I started working when my son was 9 days old, right? So I was there, I was tired, I've had, breast pumps on.
Crazy, that crazy stage.
And so I thought I dealt with that. And I thought I dealt with, like, not needing to look perfect all the time, and not needing to, have the perfect energy and the perfect mental clarity every minute of every day. I thought I dealt with that, but it turned out that I hadn't. And so there was a real forgiveness piece that I had to engage in with myself, of like, I forgive you for not being perfect. I forgive you for neglecting your self-care and getting sick. I forgive you for, inadvertently deprioritizing your health, and I forgive you for that contributing to, you getting sick and being sick for a little while. And I love you, and I accept you, and almost, doing Ho'oponopono on yourself, right? Thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me. Thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me. Thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me. And really projecting that, not just outwards to anyone who's, reacting badly, but also projecting it inwards, right?
Yeah.
And really allowing that to flow from within, and coming back to that space of, do you know what? I've got my back. I've got my back. I love me. And if I'm coming from a space of making decisions from that place, and someone reacts badly, so be it.
That's their choice, and there's no right or wrong. It's just that is their choice. And I think it's interesting there, again, feeding in that self-compassion, that kindness, that self-love that we do find so hard to take on board, especially depending on backgrounds, experiences, and how we view things. That can be quite the challenge. But I also think it's important to accept that when we talk about perfectionism, that truly that doesn't exist, apart from the entire world is perfect. And how we are in it right now, in any moment, it is what it is, as they say, Jaimie, and it just is perfect. It's perfectly so. And it's such a funny word, and it's one that we use such a lot. But we're not fixed pieces, are we? If you think about it, every day we're getting older. Things are changing inside our cells, our body, everything, as we grow older. And so wouldn't it follow that our emotions are also doing that, and our evolution, our inner evolution, is also changing. And there's a bit more in that dark corner. And like you say, I thought I cleaned that up. No more spiders, no more cobwebs, but there you are, and it's about being able to realize that at any point, part of us could open up a little bit more of a dusty space. And actually, I think that's a good thing, because what it means is that something fresh has come in, and it's shone a little light somewhere in a new way, and we've gone, ooh. And so if we're willing to accept that, we're willing to take that and have that communication with ourselves, we can keep processing and keep evolving and growing, because otherwise we just might think that we are cooked. And I think that just tags right into the perfectionist coach syndrome, which I do think is a thing. If my life isn't perfect, how can I help you with yours? And I always say, you don't have to, own the Ferrari to sell the Ferrari. Do you know what I mean? You just need to know what you are doing. And that's why we train. And that's why we learn skills and we practice, also on ourselves. But where do you think this has come from? Let's just go straight back to the online world, if I can. And because I just think this slots in with that. I really do. I just think it's what's being projected. Perception is projection. It's like we're seeing it, so we think, oh my goodness, look at all these perfect people, look at all these perfect coaches, look at all these dresses on the beaches, and I just look ridiculous in my shorts, and I could possibly do a shoot like that. And there's real women out there just doing real stuff, and of course we all want to be perceived like that and have those beautiful goddess moments, but life is not like that. So what do you think's going on where that's being curated and fed to us in the online space, that's making our craft or showing up more challenging perhaps than it needs to be?
For sure, Teresa. I definitely think that people projecting a perfect image online, whether it's conscious or unconsciously, I think that feeds perfectionist tendencies in coaches, right? So if we're going online and all we're seeing is people sharing their highlights reel and their wins and the champagne and etc., then that's when, especially in the moments where people are looking at those ahead of them, right? For example, a new coach might be going online, seeing people only presenting the perfect images, or only seeing people in their newsfeed who are ahead of them, who are presenting perfect images. And then on an unconscious level, they decide, oh, well, if that person's only presenting positive images and only sharing the highlights reel, then surely I too need to be perfect to be worthy of rising. Surely I too need to be perfect in order to advance in the space. And this almost happens on a completely unconscious level, first of all.
For sure, yeah.
And it can be really, really damaging. Especially it can be damaging when that person doesn't realize that they're only seeing that person's highlights reel, right? If a person as a consumer of content and as a relatively new person in the space observes that and thinks, well, that's how their life is all the time, that's when then that person thinks, well, I need to be perfect too, because that's obviously all that's going on for them. And I think we really need to be aware of our own cognitive biases, where we assume that just because we only see the highlights reel is all that exists. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think that there is a mass awakening taking place at the moment. And I think that the highlights reel only style of marketing is very much falling out of alignment. And people are starting to really see through it. And people are starting to actually start to get suspicious when they see someone only sharing the highlights reel, and they start to actually think, do you know what, I don't want to seek a coach or a mentor who's only showing the highlights reel, because it's not possible to have only highlights. It's not possible to have only positive and magical moments in life. And actually, if I work with someone who is doing that, it's going to feed my own insecurity. So no, I'm going to go for the person who is also showing some of their challenges, who's also showing some of the parts of life that aren't shiny and sparkly, some of the parts of life that are messy and unpredictable, right? Without, like we talked about before, showing their gaping wound and squirting their blood at everyone, right? And so I think that we as coaches have a duty to be vigilant about who we follow online, and to curate what we see very mindfully, and to really curate those people who are willing to be with their own humanity. Because guess what, if they're willing to be with their own humanity, they're also going to be willing to be with yours, whilst also helping you move forward. Because guess what, a coach being able to be with your humanity doesn't mean they can't help you move forward. This is the paradox that a lot of people don't understand. Just because someone is able to accept you in your humanness doesn't mean they can't help you move forward.
It's actually not a limit, the more, right?
Well, the more someone is able to be with you in your humanness in the moment, actually what I found, the faster you're able to accelerate. When you're able to be in the space with a coach who's not judging you for having something messy that you're dealing with, you actually move through that messy thing faster than when they're like, no, don't bring that messy thing to me. I can't deal with that. Only bring the shiny stuff. Only bring the sparkly stuff, right?
Even worse than that, you feel you can't bring the messy thing because you've got like this coach who is just so perceived as perfect. And I think you know, everything you've said there is incredibly valuable, and I thank you for sharing that. And one of the things that came up for me is this, I think, you know, the coaching industry is probably a little bit over, like, I'm the coach, or I'm the mentor, I'm the leader, because then it just puts us, and I just say that word collectively, just puts us above our client. And you know what, we are not above our clients, and I am not above my clients. My clients teach me so much, so much. I watch them, and because of course, we know we're mirrors, like you said before. And sometimes I'll meet them where they're at every time. And I'll be like, oh, that's also me today.
Yeah.
You know, what you're saying. And that's, oh my God, are you in my head? Do you know what I mean? And of course, I'm not, may only share in context if it's useful, but often that will happen and they start talking, can be completely different conversations with different clients. And I'm like, there I am. And there I am, and there I am, and there I am. And I think that's the relationship that then builds between us, because we do feel like one and we can resonate. And then we say, I know you'll understand, you know, I know you'll understand, and they'll know a bit about my background and who I really am. And so that is really, really true. I think that we are, as you know, as one of my coaches said to me, there's nobody above us and there's nobody beneath us. That's also very important. There's nobody beneath us. We need to keep check on ourselves and just meet people exactly where they are at. Yes, they're hiring us. Yes, we've got these skills, but yes, they've also got a huge amount of skills. Some of my clients got more skills than I have. Do you know what I mean? More highly trained than I am. It doesn't matter. It's where you meet. And I think that's really important to remember. And the second thing that's sparked from what you said, Jaimie, is that some of what you see online is just blatantly untrue. But, you know, we're assuming here that it's truth and look, hey, these are the good bits and this is me, you know, getting the new shiny thing, but this is also me having a bit of a fit on a Friday because I'm feeling whatever. So we're assuming those to be true, but there are times, lots of times, and you and I have talked about this, and I just want to cover this off really before we wrap up, is that some of that is just not true. Some of what people are putting out is not true. And if we don't, you know, if we accept it, what am I trying to say? If we don't question it, you know, if we don't reject it, we accept it. And so it's a really, some of the things that are out there are just not true. People saying how much money they're earning, not true. People saying how much money they've got, but they forgot to mention how much it costs to get there, and they forgot to mention all the debt they're dragging from before. And so actually I'm still a bit broke, but never mind. We'll just put this because it looks good. That to me is completely unethical. And we can't know that. And I'm not making any accusations, but from the stories that I've been told, some of the things you've shared with me personally and many others, it's not true. So we've really got to not assume that it is and do our own due diligence, get on the call, because the other thing is if we put ourselves too far above or ahead or too glam, they're scared to talk to us. They're like,
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I know, I don't want a discovery call. I can't talk to you, can't actually talk to you.
Absolutely.
Like, I just follow you online, but no. And so that you don't get any real conversations and connections, and that's the danger as well.
Yeah, I think projecting a perfect image can be really toxic and really dangerous. And actually, when I started dealing with my own perfectionism and my own, what some people refer to as looking goodness, about 3.5 years ago, I actually started attracting more clients. My clients started being more honest with me. They started telling me, do you know what? There were things that I felt I couldn't share with you before because I felt like your life was too perfect. And I felt like you wouldn't get it, or I felt like you wouldn't be able to hold space for it. And this is one of the reasons I think that every coach should be trauma informed, because I think when you become trauma informed, you become better able to hold space for your own shit and also for others' shit. And of course, there's going to be times where you need to refer out if something's really deep or really dark or something doesn't pertain to your expertise. But actually just being able to be present with someone else's shit is such an important skill in coaching. And yeah, as you said, I think it can be really, really damaging, projecting a perfect image, and it can be counterproductive. And so when we have more humanity to our brands, and when we have more humanity to our messages, and when we, you know, share about some of the tricky things as well as the wins and the celebrations and the positive things and the triumphs and the things that we learn from the challenges, we're actually able to be even more inspirational and even more, you know, creating even more of a sense of possibility for others versus feeding the comparisonitis. But as you said, there's also an individual level of personal responsibility where each and every one of us on earth owe it to ourselves to not see others as above or beneath us, but to simply look at another human being and to go, can I learn from this human being? Is this human being going to help me grow? And also to do our due diligence, right? Because as you spoke to, there is stuff that's smoke and mirrors. There are lies that are told online. And so we have that personal responsibility to do our due diligence and to not look at someone and go, oh my God, this person's my savior. This person's my hero. This person's so much more amazing than me. This person's so much more successful than me just because they put a post saying that they made a certain amount of money that may or may not be true. But instead to look at a human being eye to eye and go, can I learn from you? Can I grow from you? Are you credible? Can I trust you? You know, are your testimonials legit? Are you legit? And if so, then go for it.
Yeah.
But be really aware of anywhere that you're going, oh, this person's so amazing, so I need to hire them.
I think that's a bit of a flag, isn't it, really, as well? And
sometimes it's a flag for codependency. And then as you spoke to as well, it's really important on both sides, as both a client and as a coach, to understand coaching is a partnership. Coaching is a two-way catalytic process that is individual to you as a coach and a specific client, and that's deeply personal.
I mean,
it's not a hierarchy, and I talk about that on my website, how, you know, it's not a hierarchy. And that's one of the reasons that people who are much more successful than me, people who are twice my age, hire me, because they know I don't need to have made more money than them. I don't need to have been CEO of a major bank to be able to be an expert at helping facilitate transformation within them. And I think we have to understand that it's about, as a coach, it's about helping others see their blind spots and helping others evolve. And you don't need to have gone through the specific evolution that you're helping another with to be an expert at helping them go through the evolution. But what is
not as
true,
a coach, exactly. Not as a coach, you don't need
not
to.
As a coach.
I think as a mentor you do. But
as
I
a
think
mentor
if
you do, yeah.
If that was true, that we always needed to have somebody that was ahead, we would have run out of people. And this is what actually creates the guru status.
Yeah.
And then you see lots of people lined up, and you'll know, so all the same faces, all the same faces, all the same faces, and it's like. Yeah. Are these the leaders? Are these the go-tos? I mean, with marketing and the ability to create wealth these days, you know, it's not really that hard for Joe down the road to start something new and make a lot of money. That is kind of like the new way of living. And sometimes I suppose our generation, you know, and we're catching up with that, and we've come from a completely different upbringing, but you bring in the new generation of people. So, you know, my daughter is 14, and the next generation in their 20s, and their mindset's completely different. So they are absorbing the world in a whole new way. And I think it helps us, it helps me to talk to my daughter, to ask her, what do you think about that? And yet, if it were true there was a hierarchy, I'd be, well, I'm the mother, I know best, and I'm not going to ask you because you're only 14, what do you know? And, you know, that's actually not true. And sometimes some of the most insightful comments and feedback has come from my daughter. And, you know, she said to me once, I'll give you a little snippet before we finish. She said to me, you know, I was talking about something. I think I was moaning. So I'm going to put my hands up in the name of honesty and transparency. I was moaning. I was having a moan about something. And do you know what she said to me, Jaimie? She said, Mummy, do you think multimillionaires think like that? In fact, I think what she said is that multimillionaires don't think like that. And I was like, nobody had shut me up so well for such a long time. It was just a moment of absolute. I was like, she's right. She's right. Of course, they don't walk around their kitchen having a good moan about this, that, and the other, which is absolutely not important at all, and giving themselves a hard time. And you know what? That clarity and that feedback came from a 14-year-old who's confident enough to say that. And that was without invitations. Sometimes when I invite, it's just wonderful. So I think that just presses the point that we're not above or beneath anyone. I'm sure you learn a lot from your young son and some of the ways that he reflects back to you, and you know, they're just incredible.
They are, absolutely. And that question that she asked you, or that statement that she made of, you know, do you think that that multimillionaires think like that? I think asking oneself the question of, would the millionaire version of me, or with the multimillionaire version of me, or with the billionaire version of me, whatever that next level version of you is, would that version of me be worrying about this thing, or what would that version of me be thinking about this thing? How would that version of me deal with this situation? Because it can be so clarifying, especially when you're in a frenzy about something, or really over analyzing or worrying about something. Asking that question, would the next level version of me be handling this like this? Would the next level version of me be thinking like this? Or would the next level version of me be going, okay, well, this is how we're going to deal with it, this is the action we're going to take?
Well, it wouldn't be a thing. That's the thing. It wouldn't be a thing. It wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be. And so it was like, it was momentary, but it was also, for the rest of the day, opened up an internal coaching session with myself. And you know, I was walking, I was like, it just kept landing and re-landing and re-landing. It was wonderful. And I think if we take that, if we take, yes, our difficult lives, and we take our perfectionism tendencies, we take all of our humanities, we accept them, and think about how we can best show up. I mean, I admire people when they write their, you know, heart-bearing posts and that. I admire them. I really do. And sometimes I think, well, maybe that's not my style, and that's okay, but I will share what I think is my style. And that's the other thing as well. You don't have to expose everything, or show everything, or reveal, or be bare naked on social media, like emotionally. You don't have to do that.
Literally physically naked.
Or literally physically, you don't have to do
literally
anything.
In your underwear, right? Like that's for some people, it's totally on brand for them to absolutely bare their soul and their boobies on social media. That's fine. If that's on brand for you, amazing. But the question to ask is, what is actually on brand for me? What does vulnerability look like for me? As an individual? And that's important, because there's nothing worse than the fake kind of try hard vulnerability, where it's like, oh, I'm writing a post to be vulnerable so I can tick the vulnerable box.
Oh my God.
And then it occurs as inauthentic and icky. That's not the one either.
No. And of course, you know, we forgive each other and ourselves if that ever happens, because we are at least here trying. We are at least here showing up. And okay, maybe we bungled that post a bit, but there will be something in there that's truth, something in there that's intentional, that like I want to share. And maybe that's a bit cringy for me, and in 2 years it's going to come up on memories. I'm going to go, oh my God. But what can we do next, you know, and how can we just keep moving forward? So we've covered like boundaries, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, unicorns and rainbows that don't exist, how to stay resilient during all of this, really, and how to ultimately be kind to ourselves and realize that we're humans in a capacity, doing a job to the best of our ability. And if that remains our intention on a daily basis, then I think that is a pretty good thing. So thank you so much, Jaimie, for this insightful conversation. And I really hope that if you've been shopping, walking, working, cycling, lying down, whatever it is, that you've enjoyed spending time with Jaimie and myself, and got some really nice reflections from this podcast, because that is our intention, to just bring you something new to think about in every podcast. So thanks so much. And where can people find out more about you, Jaimie? Where would you like them to flock?
And I just want to leave people with a parting thought as well. That's something that you touched on earlier, which is some of our greatest challenges when we're coaches, some of our greatest challenges happen for us in order for us to learn and grow and evolve and create a possibility where then our clients, either current clients or future clients, can come to us and go, do you know what? She overcame that. And because she overcame that, I believe I can too.
Yeah.
And I think as coaches, when we look at our challenges, not just as gifts for our own learning as an evolution and our own clarity and our own alignment, our own invitations to go deeper into alignment, but when we also look at them as, you know, these examples of what's possible to others in the future, I think it remains possible to be so much calmer and more resilient in the moment when we're going through stuff, because we go, do you know what? This isn't just for me. This isn't just for my evolution. This is for my clients as well. And that's such a powerful thing. So I'm on Facebook at Jaimie Sarah, Jaimie. Sarah. I've got 2 eyes in Jaimie because my mum was being arty and she loves French. On Instagram, I'm definitely, and on LinkedIn, I am Jaimie Sarah.
Okay, lovely. So when you look at the show notes, all Jaimie's links will be in there, so you can connect with her. And once again, thank you. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I will look forward to continuing our friendship behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, same.
Take care. Thank you.